A healthy meal is a luxury for many people. Most people in the country are struggling to put food on the table for their families. Non-profit organisations are playing their part in assisting disadvantaged communities. But the pandemic has left many people without an income, which has increased pressure on organisations. To discuss this further, we're joined by Bertha Magoge from Advancing Children for Success. Bertha, thank you very much for speaking to us this afternoon on Upfront. So tell us a little bit more about the impact of the pandemic, specifically on child hunger, because adults who have who are hungry and who are struggling to put meals on the table at least have some means of trying to find work to put food on the table. But children are probably the most vulnerable in our communities to hunger.
Thank you very much, Annie. Good afternoon to you and to your viewers. Yes, absolutely. The effects and the impact of the pandemic has been catastrophic for most poor communities. Advancing Children for Success, ACFS, has been working in these poor communities now for the past 75 years. But since last year, at the start of the pandemic, and this year, we have seen incredible increase of food insecurity and child hunger in particular, which has really been very difficult for us and many other NGOs who are doing this kind of work. Children are in most cases very dependent on societal infrastructure, such as our feeding schemes, such as school feeding programs. This is the place where many of them will get a guaranteed meal at least once a day. But because of the impact of the pandemic and the distraction that it has caused in our society, many children are finding themselves going to bed many days of the week hungry, or will just have taken a cup of tea and a slice of bread. And so as we contemplate the effects or the impact of the pandemic, we really must pay special attention to children, because they are silent, their voices are silent, they are dependent on adult caregivers, and many of them are even unable to have anybody to tell of their hungry situation.
Bertha, recent studies by various different bodies have revealed that child hunger often leads to depression, to bullying, and to child-on-child violence. Can you tell us a little bit more about how these circumstances play out?
So yes, absolutely. As children become, more desperate, unsure and confused, because they don't have an explanation, they don't understand why it is that they are becoming so hungry. And so depression sets in, and with that depression, a lot of bullying, a lot of social inadequate behavior starts showing itself, and children start fighting over very petty things. We are seeing this very much being demonstrated in our community centers, where children just are now punching each other. The society is also reflected on them as they become even more violent with each other, and so it is because of some of these impacts and these shortcomings that they're experiencing at home that they become violent towards each other. On the other extreme are children who are also very depressed, that they are feeling very apathetic to be able to participate in any programs that are presented before them. So they show no interest, they wish to talk to no one, they just look very unhappy, they seldom smile because of the situation that they are going through day in and day out.
Bertha, school feeding schemes are meant to alleviate the situation. Most schools are back and have been back for a number of months, and yet the problem persists. Why are school feeding schemes struggling to alleviate the problem of child hunger, or is the burden on them too large?
The burden has really become too large. As we've seen the economy struggling, in the best of times we are talking about communities and families that have already been struggling. And so the impact of the pandemic has meant even more families have lost their ability to put food on the table. So the problem is overwhelming many organizations, feeding schemes like ourselves, but also school feeding schemes. There are just too many children. But also because schools are trying to cope with the impact or the effects of trying to stop the spread, this rotational system that is in many schools means that many children are actually not able to come on a daily basis to their one guaranteed meal that they were used to. And so the effort that schools are making to try and limit the number of children in school also means that a group of children are going without food. So not only is it that the numbers are just too much, but also our desire to limit crowding and so forth also means that this is negatively impacting children, and in particular the young children. So we are talking about children who are coming into school, but we must remember the most vulnerable cohort of children are actually those who are under 5 years old. Many of them are not going to school. They are stuck in their home environments. Their parents are not going to work. There's a struggle, to put adequate food on the table. And so the younger children are actually also particularly more vulnerable.
Bertha, the long-term consequence of continuous undernutrition in children is stunting, which in turn reduces cognition, educational performance, which means that if we do not fix or address the child hunger problem in South Africa, we're going to see an entire generation of children miss out on their educational goals. One day, 10, 15, 18 years down the line, we're going to see an entire generation of children not performing in the job market because they missed out on basic nutrition.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it much better than you have. Stunting is one of the most difficult issues that South Africa has been dealing with for decades now. And so this pandemic is only really exacerbating and showing up these cracks that are there existing in our society. And children are particularly vulnerable and sensitive to poor nutrition. So it's not just about adequate food, it is also about nutritious food, so that their developing bodies can be assisted to ensure that they gain all the capacities that they need mentally, physically, cognitively, as you've mentioned. And so as this problem continues, I feel that we are really sitting on a ticking time bomb where we are not preparing our children adequately to be able to face the difficulties or the challenges that they need to face as they grow and mature into adults. They are going to become very unproductive because once stunting has set in, there is no way of reversing it. And once stunting has set in, it means also their performance academically is going to be severely compromised. So we find that these children will then continue to play a catch-up game. They are catching up with their nutrition, they are catching up with their cognitive development, they are catching up with their maturity. And so really we must take a stance and really focus on ensuring that we don't put this generation into jeopardy.
Thank you very much. Bertha Magoge from Advancing Children for Success speaking to us there, painting a very dire picture, very important for government, for corporates, for ordinary South Africans to continue supporting these organizations in trying to make sure that children's basic food needs are met.